You went on with the always impeccably dressed John Fort and Morgan Brennan. You talked a little bit about Qualcomm, but let's talk about it here.
Yeah, so I actually did was on CNBC twice in a week, talking Qualcomm, and I really do appreciate being on Morgan and John's show. So Qualcomm absolutely blew away expectations. It was a beat raise, which was super fun, and surprisingly, they talked about smartphones, which was the big driver, and also automotive, which really hasn't made the bar aside from their $30 billion backlog. So really impressive. And while the company, Cristiano and Akash, and I did appreciate talking to them about earnings, didn't necessarily want to call it, the end of the bottom, but I believe that this is the end of the bottom here. They need to be very conservative because they don't control the China economy. But from all my channel checks and all the data that I've seen, the inventory, particularly Android, has gone down. I did want to. Oh, IoT was soft, just like everybody else, and we talked about with the context of Lattice, but great tailwinds in handsets. It's interesting. We saw Xiaomi and a couple other of the big Chinese handset makers launch their handsets the same week that Qualcomm came out with Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. And, that's actually a pull-in on the dates they normally do that, because typically you'll see Qualcomm announce in the fourth quarter and then go live with units in January. And I see that as kind of an acceleration, which I think will benefit the company going forward. I have to talk a little bit about their new PC platform, the Snapdragon X Elite. We'll talk about it a little bit when we get to the Apple event, but they ran up some incredible numbers versus Apple, Intel, and AMD. Now, I did not run the benchmarks, and neither did Futurum Labs, but at least the methodology looked sound enough for me to at least say it's going to be a very competitive part. And we'll talk more about that when it comes to the Apple event and M3.
Yeah, so you did hit it on the head, Pat. Qualcomm was robust. And again, this is a comparative robustness that we have to talk about. I think it's only right. Year on year, it's still not where the company wants to be, but we have to be very clear about the headwinds. You're talking about a company that had over 60% of revenue relationship with China, and an economy in China that's become incredibly uncertain and to some extent unstable. Mid double digit growth in China handset, which means, again, while the diversification strategy I think has worked very well, especially automotive, very impressive transformation there under Nakul Degal's leadership. But in handsets, it's been pretty woeful, especially in China. And the concern has been palpable, and the stock has seen a response. But again, this is, Pat, something I think you said about Lattice. This wasn't much self-inflicted. I mean, when you talk about the innovation and the design, what we saw at Snapdragon Summit, the company continues to out-innovate, out-design, deliver better specs, better SoCs, and better performance to all of the handset makers. This is just a byproduct of less people are buying handsets. And even in Apple's number, you saw the device softness. It wasn't like Apple's getting all the market. Nobody is buying smartphone. Now, nobody, as in only like 100 billion this quarter. But I know, dollars, not units. The point though is the growth is coming in the right places. The bottoming out of inventory. We'll talk a bit more about that when we hit AMD here in a moment. But we're seeing a transformation of sort of where the bottom is. So we saw enterprise stand longer. It's been more robust because of AI. We We saw industrial devices stick around a little bit longer because companies were implementing technologies to measure and analytics. Handsets, consumer stuff fell off the cliff at the end of the P word. And it's really only slowly coming back. But the slow revival for many people out there that have kind of questioned should be a good indicator, not just Qualcomm, every company in the handset space, all the OEMs. You look at like companies like Dell, HP, Lenovo that have had kind of long, slow periods from their device parts of their businesses, should be turning a corner, because the silicon is often the leading indicator of when those cycles are going to begin. And there's a lot of indication here that things are turning. So no one is saying so much as a bottom, Pat, but you and I have talked to a few CEOs this week, including Cristiano Amon, and the positive tenor in their voice is encouraging.
Yeah, you can. Isn't it funny what people can tell you without telling you?
That's the art, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I think we're professional tell you without tell-youers. When you have so much information rattling around in your brain and you're never 100% sure if it was NDA, so you just say nothing.